This is the divergence which is taking place between Gen Z men and Gen Z women. And you guys wonder why dating is so screwed, especially when every single girl has in their dating profile bio, if you voted for this particular party, swipe left. If you voted for Orange Man, swipe left. If you voted for Dementia Man, swipe left. Whew, guys, these United States of America are more cooked than salted onions. It's the Gen Zer, and I'm back. Today, guys, we're going to react to this very interesting video by CBS News titled Gen Z Women More Liberal Than Men Study Finds. Calling me shocked and surprised. Without any further ado, let us tackle this video.
For decades, young men and women in the U.S. had similar political ideologies on average. That's changed over the last 6 years. A Financial Times analysis of Gallup data found American Gen Z women are 30 percentage points more liberal than their male counterparts. Women aged 18 to 29 take more progressive positions on issues like immigration and racial justice than young men do, even as the sexes still roughly see eye to eye in older generations. Alice Evans is a visiting fellow at Stanford, and she joins us now to tell us why that gender divergence is happening in the United States. And
before we go any further, let's go back to that graph. Let us return to that graph. Wow. This is the divergence which is taking place between Gen Z men and Gen Z women. And you guys wonder why dating is so screwed, especially when every single girl has in their dating profile bio, if you voted for this particular party, swipe left. If you voted for Orange Man, swipe left. If you voted for Dementia Man, swipe left. Whew, guys, these United States of America are more cooked than salted onions. They are more cooked than Ratatouille in the kitchen cooking himself. Okay. I mean, it is over. I won't say it's over, but it's looking very dire. We're in dire strait. But let's allow this expert to provide her opinion, and let's see what she has to say.
And she joins us now to tell us why that gender divergence is happening in the United States and also, interestingly, in many other countries in the world. Dr. Evans, okay, why is this happening? Well, I'll just start there. Why?
So I think the evidence points to economic, technological, and also cultural changes. So younger generations tend to have what we call zero-sum mentalities. They believe that your success becomes at my expense, and that seems to be associated with growing up during weaker conditions. Also, technologically, news media increasingly highlights one negative event, terror.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this image posted here on our screen. We see causes of the gender divide include feminized public culture, economic resentment, social media filter bubbles, and cultural entrepreneurs. Feminized public culture is definitely at play here. Public discourse, dare I say, since the 1980s, certainly since the 1990s, has been dominated by women. If we look at daytime TV has always been ran by women. You've rarely had young men, or rarely had men really dominate daytime TV since the 1990s. Of course, you'll have your shows like uh Jerry, what's his name? Uh, Jerry Springer. Yes, I was gonna say Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, you've had shows like Jerry Springer or Maury, but usually daytime talk show TV consists of a bunch of women around the table, either like The View or The Talk, or the likes of Oprah and other ladies who are daytime TV hosts. Wow. Yeah, this feminized public culture will lead to a divide because guess what? As this lady just stated, young people view life as a zero sum game. So if young women are being able to partake in a feminized culture, young men are going to see that as at their detriment. It's only natural. Let's carry on.
Horrible atrocities. And also in Western media since the 2010s, there's been much more attention to racial and gender bias. And then all that gets amplified by social media filter bubbles. As we self select into information and news that appeals to us, we then get cocooned in these echo chambers of agreement, righteous resistance, and very little debate.
Yes, we're all caterpillars in our own cocoons, especially young Gen Z people. Yes, we are all caterpillars in our own cocoons. We consume the content which we want to consume, and we disregard the content which does not appeal to us. Uh, Conservative young men will not waste their time, for the most part, watching content by liberal women unless they're able to use it to dunk dunk on the libs or dunk on the libtards. And young conservative women are not going to spend time hearing about. I'm sorry, young liberal women are not going to spend time exploring content for young conservative men because they don't want to look at these misogynist and homophobic and all the types of obic and all types of bias content, right? As they would say, all types of bias accusations which they lob towards conservative people and conservative men. So, we're essentially in the catch 22. Do we allow Western society to collapse, or do we find a way around that? Well, we're certainly finding a way around that with immigration. I'll tell you that much. Young people, young Gen Z American men and American women, please reproduce because if you don't, you will probably be replaced. I'll just be honest with you. You'll definitely be replaced. So, fair warning. And that's not conspiratorial. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here. But if you're not reproducing if you're not reproducing to create the workforce of tomorrow, the American workforce of tomorrow will not have your ideals and your values. They'll not share those. But at this juncture, hell, couples would not even share the same values, right? Since on average, young men are 30 points more conservative than young women, and young women are 30 points more liberal than young men. So you can say that the values are not necessarily that mutual. So maybe there's no need to reproduce at all. Let's see how we carry on from there.
And then, because corporate algorithms want to keep us hooked on social media, they feed us one content that pleases us, that appeals to our priors, and also, shocking examples of scandals of our foes. So, all that is encouraging ideological polarization, especially as younger people spend more time on their phones, less time in the real world with other people that actually probably agree with them in real life. And then, seizing on all those economic and cultural technological changes, cultural entrepreneurs try to tell their story and garner wider popularity.
Here in my 4-car garage, which I bought trading crypto from my mom's basement, and now I'm so wealthy and rich. I have a 4-car garage. Who is that reminiscent of?
And by cultural entrepreneurs, you're talking about basically influencers seeing this madness and saying, well, I might as well make money off of it by poking at it.
AKA grifting.
Yes, exactly. People like Andrew Tate. So if
Hey, lady, what color is your Bugatti?
there are men growing up in economically difficult conditions and feeling resentment towards women getting handouts or foreigners getting handouts, they tell this story that, you're not to blame. It's these women on quotas.
Now, this sounds terrible for.
How did Andrew Tate come up in this discussion? I understand that he's been quite, the prominent figure when discussing the issues which young men are facing. For the past couple of years, he's been quite prominent in this conversation since he had such a meteoric rise to fame, right? He had such a meteoric rise to fame, and he's gotten popular very quickly, rather quite quickly. At one point in time, he was the most searched individual on Google. But how has he managed to weasel his way into this conversation? Why? Why is he mentioned at all? Let's carry on.
Society. And so, what are some of the ramifications of this in the areas of politics, economics, just general healthiness of society?
Well, it all depends on what we do about it. But if that ideological polarization continues, you might expect more difficulties for heterosexual love or family formation.
And is that not what we've been talking about this entire video? Yes, we will certainly experience difficulties for heterosexual love and family formation. Now, there are various alternatives which are being proposed on, in various online spheres. Of course, we have the movement of passport bros who are talking about going overseas to find wives. Um, that won't necessarily benefit these United States because these passport bros are proposing that men stay in their respective wives' countries and remain in their respective wives' countries and not bring them over to the United States. So, in essence, we're opening up American society to collapse. We have to come together. Look, young ladies, if you find a young man who you think is cute, you think he's interesting, and you can see him being a provider and building a life with you, a life of dignity, who cares about political opinion? There are too many young Gen Zers are hung up on politics. Gen Zers who are not even able to vote yet. Now, mind you, a substantial portion of Gen Z are still in school. They're still young people between the age of 14 and 18. Yes, you're a Gen Zer. And why are you worried about politics to the point where you'll allow that to affect your dating options? Oh my God, who did you vote for? Oh my goodness, you don't hate the orange man? I'm not dating you. This is absurd. You see, I think that Gen Z is lacking the parental guidance. And not just Gen Z, but Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, and even boomers lacked the parental guidance, which, dare I say, the greatest generation had. The silent generation or the greatest generation, they had that guidance. They understood struggle, they understood honor, they understood various core principles which they were raised with. I don't think the boomers passed that on to us. The boomers were certainly raised with that, but the boomers, of course, they're a very selfish generation. I will say that they're now about to just exhaust all of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Of course, they don't care about future generations. They're going to do the reverse mortgage on their homes. Who cares about leaving behind an inheritance for their children? I mean, they've stolen everything from the future generations. So why not just steal that last one? Yes, I am dunking on you, boomers. I am defecating on you. You have created an economy where you all you have done is take, take, take. You haven't provided any value as a generation. Of course, there's always going to be great individuals from each generation, but as a generation, you have dropped the ball. The silent generation, they have built these United States of America. They certainly have. And the boomers, they just, they were leeches, essentially. Going back to the topic at hand, young Gen Z people need to try to recapture some of that ancient folk wisdom, which was sadly and unfortunately abandoned. Because without it, we're screwed. I mean, look at the headline here. Gen Z women more liberal than men, study finds. And of course, that's going to affect dating. That's going to affect family planning. That's going to affect the entire life trajectory of these groups of people. Why? Simply because you have a different belief about a particular political ideology, which may or may not affect you. This is ludicrous.
You found that the U.S. wasn't the only country with this split. There were divisions in China and then also South
Really?
Korea. All the same causes, or are there idiosyncrasies in those countries?
And before she speaks on South Korea, I know they have the 4B movement over in South Korea, which where women are essentially saying they will not reproduce with men, right? They don't want any men in their lives. And in China, we have the effect of Sheng Yu or leftover women. We know how the Chinese feel about a woman once she turns really past the eight. Once she turns 30, I mean, you're Shen Yu. Whew. Oh man, this world is definitely headed towards a dystopian nightmare. I can already see it.
Right, so that's a great question. China and South Korea traditionally have very strong son preference. So men are revered. And even though both countries have become much more gender equal, South Korea's historically high sex ratios mean that men face the world's worst dating market. So they're constantly getting rejected, getting rebuffed, and that feeds into resentment, loss of status, and then they vent online. Meanwhile,
Wow. Imagine living in a sausage fest. Whew. If you're living in China, you need to get out, man. Well, they are getting out. They're going to Africa, of course. Yeah, they are going to Africa, or they're coming here to the States, to these United States by way of Mexico. Orale way. Yes. They're taking some rides with some coyotes, like Wiley Coyote. And yeah, they're ending up here. So certainly, I guess guys are figuring out China's probably not the play.
Korea has seen massive feminist activism again in those social media filter bubbles. So Korean women are becoming much more liberal and egalitarian and feminist, where men are continuing to vent and feel that frustration.
Our advanced civilizations and advanced societies are crumbling right in front of our very eyes. But of course, our boomer politicians who still hold power in our Western countries, especially in these United States, they don't care. They can't see the decay which is taking place before their very own eyes. And guess what? Their own physical bodies are decaying before our very own eyes. They're about to be dead in the next 10 years. They could not care any less. They're worried about setting up their families, and their families, their children and their children's futures. They don't care about their constituency. Meanwhile, we have actual issues, tangible issues, which need to be solved. Of course, nobody cares about those until society collapses. And guess who will be held holding the bill? Hmm? It won't be the boomers who've exhausted all of our resources, who've gone on all their fancy trips throughout their careers. They've seen the stock market rise sharply throughout their lives, and of course they're going to reverse mortgage all of their homes. They're yeah. Not those responsible, not that responsible generation, of course. It's not going to be the Gen Xers, who, although they were a smaller generation, really, I mean, they were the latchkey kids, if I'm not mistaken. But what else have they done? Like, what have the Gen Xers done as a generation to help us avoid financial crisis? If anything, pretty much the 2008 Great Recession. Yeah, the boomers do have a part, but the Gen Xers definitely were the ones who spearheaded that. They were the ones out here going out and getting ninja loans. No income, no job, you'll get a loan. Come here, we'll give you a loan. Getting subprime mortgages when you know damn well you can't afford it. That's the Gen Xers, those idiots. The millennials, I feel bad for the millennials. They were the everybody gets a trophy generation. So they started out the world soft. I think they're trying to redeem themselves, but it's not going well. The millennials are really DEI the DEI management generation. They're the they them theirs generation in their bios in corporate America and whatnot. I don't know if millennials are doing as best as they can to redeem themselves. And Gen Z, whew, I don't know if anybody's going to virtue signal much more than Gen Z. I've yet to see it, but we'll definitely go ahead and see how that plays out as well.
So the last question, Alice, is there any way this is temporary or that it can be addressed? Because it feels like it just kicks out the legs from under, the structure of a healthy society.
Society's decaying before our very own eyes. I wonder who said that. It will only this will be temporary. It may be permanent during our lifetimes. We may not see it change, but it will change. It has to. All these social movements or all these social woes did not come about in one day. So guess what? They will not be resolved in one day. But there was once a point in time when they didn't exist, and you can be rest assured that there will be another point in time where they won't exist anymore. So we'll just have to allow it to pass. Unfortunately, you're living now as they're currently taking place. So if you're a young man or a young lady in the West, whew, and you're a Gen Z, more power to you.
Right. So I think if corporate algorithms are feeding us sensationalist, shocking content and then keeping us cocooned in echo chambers, deluding us with about what other Americans think, we might want to change that. And there are all kinds of regulation that could break up those corporate algorithms and break up those filter bubbles. And then we can just start talking to each other again and realizing, building empathy.
This is such a feel good answer. I'll be politically correct here. This is such an unrealistic answer. Let me be nice here. That was not a good answer at all. That was horrible. Oh my god, we're just going to break up the algorithms and we'll all hold hands and sing kumbaya. Of course, I understand the concept of providing hope to the populace, but this was not a solution. This is not a solution. You want the algorithms, you want those social media companies which are pushing those algorithms to retain users on their ads, on their applications, to essentially mix up the algorithms and to break up the monotony, which is going to encourage the users to leave their platforms. So essentially you want the toxic algorithm and the flown out algorithm, or the flown out application, to not entice their users to stay on their applications longer. I'm sorry, but that was a horrible answer, and that's not going to happen unless you have government oversight. But having big government regulate things, that's another issue. You know how that usually goes. It Government will create an entity, and the entity will become a monster of its own. Look at the IRS, oh, the Federal Reserve. Well, the Federal Reserve isn't part of the government, but that's another story for another day. Let's allow CBS News to finish its reporting.
And maybe a little personal self-restraint as well. We're very grateful for talking to you.
Personal self restraint. Yes, personal self restraint against algorithms which have armies of psychologists and sociologists and uh, trained professionals who have created these algorithms to keep you on there. But of course, your individual self restraint is what's going to save society and civilization. Great reporting, CBS News. Very gun ho about finding a solution. Of course, as usual, you can expect nothing less from the mainstream media. Anywho, it's the Gen Zer, and I'm out. Peace.